Dentists go to dental school and they're trained clinically, and that's it. And you're not trained on your finances. You're not trained on operations. You're not trained on how to be a leader. And we're going into AI and try to figure this out.
Odin answers about 98% of questions in Facebook groups better than all the comments combined, but the comments also give their own human perspective, which is invaluable. So we figure there's $2 billion a year in payroll burned and asking questions in peer-to-peer support groups in dentistry. And if Odin were to be asked first, we'd save about $900 million. With Odin, you're going to get a good answer that's enlightening, that's a masterclass, feels amazing, and then the question's just going to be different. So that way we can save the owner doctor's time and get the associate wrapped up.
Welcome back to another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the owner of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field against the big guys out there so you can grow the way that you want, but you can't grow when you can't make decisions properly and quickly. You know, a lot of dentists are burning out because they just have too many questions, too many problems, too many legal headaches, team training, associate training. And today, my guest, Eddie, who's the CEO of The Vault, is going to break down how AI agents can actually help you with many of these problems. He specifically built out this product just for dentists. And we're going to dive into some of the hardest things that you have to deal with, like, should I sell to a DSO versus sell private? Should I train my team a certain way? What about my systems of onboarding associates and how do I align them clinically? How do I train my team? All of my CFO stuff, all the legal questions. We're going to talk about it all. And this is going to bring a ton of value for you if you're in the dental industry and running a practice. Stay tuned. All right, we are live for another episode. And a lot of you are asking, what can I do about AI? I've recently had multiple dentists that came to our Facebook group and they're like, dude, I feel behind on AI. And, you know, I do too. I think anybody in the AI world, I heard people who actually own like the big AI companies. They're like, every day there's something new that I learn our AI model can do. And it's super fast and it's super confusing and it's super disorientating. And like, it almost feels like we're living in like 3 years worth of time and in like a week or two. But it's also really, really exciting because you can start to bridge gaps in ways that you just couldn't before. And I asked my friend Eddie to come on because he owns one of the coolest AI companies inside of dental. And it's specifically for dental. And he has a huge background that we won't go into right now in AI and a lot of other cool things. But he built a service that solves a huge problem. And the problem is this: dentists go to dental school and they're trained clinically. And that's it. And you're not trained on your finances. You're not trained on operations. You're not trained on how to be a leader. You're not trained on even how to teach other dentists clinical skills and how to align clinical skills that way. You're taught none of these things. And so you come out and you're like, well, I'm a dentist, but you don't have any of the tools to be successful at the business side of dentistry. And what Eddie has done is he's taken the COO, the CFO, the CEO, and the CCO's brain. And it took me a while to wrap my brain around this because I'm like, Eddie, how are people using this? And we're going into AI and trying to figure this out. But this is what it is in a box. And he's taken all of these things. And now you as a dentist, regardless of how long you've been a dentist, you can go in and you can quickly get up to speed on any of those topics and do it with like the smartest mind that has almost all the right answers all the time. This is really, really cool. And it's endless. Okay. So I had to challenge Eddie. I'm like, Eddie, I'm going to give you some boxes that we're going to stay in because this could go like in a million different directions. But I think the first one that I want to go down is the legal side. So I'll just tell you, for me, I have a decent sized company. So anytime you have a decent sized company, you get sued. So I've been sued a couple times and that's just part of business. Right. And the first time I got sued, I was so scared, like so scared. Now with AI, I've had people come to me and they're like, oh, we're going to sue the or whatever, threaten me. I slap that thing into AI and I'm just like, and it knows a lot about my company. We've trained it on our company and what we do, which is a little bit different than dentists. And right away, it's like, oh yeah, no, you don't have to worry about that. Here's what, you need to be worried about. Go to contact a lawyer for this. Removes all questions and all fear. You have a model that helps dentists with all the legal stuff that they have to deal with, which is way more than me because you got HIPAA, you got dental onboarding, you got if you want to roll up into a DSO, if you want to sell to a DSO, if you want to give equity to an associate dentist. So let's talk about this legal side first. Let's start there.
Well, first thing with AI for me is you got to have your advisors. Like, right, that's like the first thing.
Your human advisors you're referring to?
Yeah, you got to have your human advisors. I mean, that is the most important thing, period. You need your sources clinically, legally, whatever it may be. We do have a member whose daughter is a partner in I think a pretty substantial law firm down in Florida. And as a joke, he gave her Odin. Not as a joke, really, but they pay for all this legal. They're their own world, right? And he gave her access to Odin, and she called him up. She's like, "Dad," she goes, "this thing's killing everything we bought, like destroying it." And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, I go, "Wow." And I'm like, oh, "Okay." And then apparently they used it for some dissertation that they were doing for some judge somewhere. She hit him up again and she goes, "This thing's incredible." But that's great. The reason that's possible is because how Odin processes information and how it does its research and how we use multiple models together. And it took us years to figure this out. But that's not its core purpose. That was a whole different industry, but it does do well in, those frayed sort of areas that go outside of the box of its core knowledge. But for the dentist, it's probably the ultimate research tool to get you what I like to call closer to the tip of the sword, so that when you ask an advisor or you go into a Facebook group and ask a question, instead of getting 100 random answers because your question isn't good enough, Odin saves you, hours. We did a study over the last year. Odin answers about 98% of questions in Facebook groups better than all the comments combined, but the comments also give their own human perspective, which is invaluable. And so we figure there's $2 billion a year in payroll burned and asking questions in peer-to-peer support groups in dentistry. And if Odin were to be asked first, we'd save about $900 million,
And to your point, you go to Odin and you can frame it, right? You can frame the conversation. You can poke it. You can even ask it to stillman your position. Like, why is this good? And then stillman the other side of the conversation. That doesn't mean there's not gaps still. There's always going to be some gap somewhere. But now you can take that and take it to a lawyer or take it to a Facebook group and say, ask a very, very, very pointed question that you can get some really precise answers to, like super niche, where you might have a lawyer on there that's dealt with 300 of those cases and no one else has dealt with that. That's going to be invaluable, but it got you closer so you're not chasing your tail. So that's the legal side. What about one thing that you told me that it does really well is it helps with onboarding associates, because it helps you align with their training and clinical expectations. And just from my experience, that's probably the biggest gap in dental as people grow, is like, oh, we need more dentists. You hire the dentist, you're like, they suck. And it's like, well, they were trained differently than you. How does Odin help with that?
That's a really great question. And just really back to the legal side of things, just to the audience, I would just so we're clear, I would never trade AI for a great advisor. Always call it an advisor.
Not legal. This is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. This is not any of that. Yeah.
For associates, this is interesting, because when whether it's clinical or the business of dentistry, or the associates trying to figure out admin and the flow, and then that owner has their certain flow that they like, right? They have their own process. We're able to get an associate running faster. So instead of a 2-year ramp up time, we can usually get it done a lot of times in months, minus the things that just do take that amount of time because of hands-on. But we're able to, answer questions that the doc would answer. We're able to get the kind of the soul print of the practice. And after running through multi-core modelization, which is how our checks and balances for answering questions with AI, we're able to get more guardrails in place so that the associate's able to get better answers. But that way, we're not having to ask a human questions that we can ask Odin, and then we can really the associate could be there at 1 o'clock in the morning with a question on how would my doctor handle this, and be able to get a really good answer immediately. That isn't the kind of answer where you go into a Facebook group and it's like, you know how it is. It's like, well, I have a question, but ChatGPT said this, blah. But it's like, but it doesn't know what to make of what it said exactly. So it's still they're still asking the same question, only with a lot of kind of garbage associated, which almost makes it more difficult. Where with Odin, you're going to get a good answer that's enlightening, that's a masterclass, that feels amazing. And then the question is just going to be different. So that way we can save the owner doctor's time and get the associate ramped up faster.
How did you, like, how close or how much do you have the doc? Like, if I'm a dentist and I'm like, hey, this is how I practice, how long does it take it for me to get Odin up to speed to understand me? Or is it just that you have it preset to a certain level of expectation of clinical? So that's the only way I know how to ask that question as a non-clinical guy for our dental listeners.
I think you did great. So Odin out of the box, the members, everybody shares the same platform. And then you can upload some minor customizations. There's an Apex program, which is a market exclusivity program. And we won't talk about that today. But what we do in those situations, and sometimes for non-Apex members, Gary, is we do a doctor profile meeting. This meeting is an interview, takes about 4 hours. And we go from dental school all the way through to every possible, there's 320 questions that you could imagine. And we get their soul print. We get them going down rabbit holes. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? What's your viewpoint on staff? What's the perfect team look like? By the time we're done, we built an Odin architecture, and we write about 150 to 200 page book on them. It's a work of art that they will never otherwise see in their lifetime. And then we build spreadsheets that'll go like clinical decision makers or CBCT, and then here's the dissertation on that. And then we produce not a psych profile, but a communication profile that's exactly how you should communicate to that doctor, and exactly the type of communication that doctor can receive, and how would you word it.
You've actually shared one of those with me, somebody I was working with, and you shared that with me, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So
it's full on crazy. But then with that, Odin now knows that doctor almost in some ways better than
the doctor knows themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you have a staff question or an associate question. It's I don't know, man. You just have to see it work. It's crazy.
Okay, so I want to hit another one that we talked about that I think people will like. So this question comes up all the time is like, well, I want to sell to a DSO, but they're promising me XYZ structure versus I could sell private, and I don't really want to sell to the DSO, but it seems like a lot more money, but is it really more money? And like, I've done whole podcasts and debates and like the whole 9 yards on this. And I'm not smart enough to answer it. How can Odin help a dentist with that if they take all their legal documents and bring it in and like, okay, I got 2 offers. I can sell to this private guy who's a cut and dry, like this is how it's going to work and this is how long I have to work, or I could sell to the DSO, but there's all these shadow stocks and blah, 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 blah. Can it help you work through something like that?
On a religious experience kind of level. However, once again, you have to have your human advisors. I mean, these guys have been through the war, man. I mean, they know, they can feel, whether you have a lease situation that's a bad deal, or, if you're opening a new practice, but you're going to a DSO. Here's some things that Odin can do. One, yes, it can review everything much better than a consumer grade kitchen sink, low intelligence, hallucinating AI, which no practice should be using for any complicated questions at all. There's a reason you don't go to Reddit and to WebMD for clinical and business of dentistry questions. There's journals that you pay thousands of dollars a year. And if you want that level of intelligence and AI, you just get the vault, unless you want to go to Reddit and WebMD and ChatGPT. But it's interesting that you asked this, because what Odin did recently is a doctor wanted to, she was getting approached by a lot of potential DSOs, and she's thinking about it. We took and interviewed her and had Odin interview her, and Odin asked 10 really interesting pointed questions. And when she was able to answer those questions, it really took the life that she wanted to live after the transaction and gave her a rundown of all of her options and what she might want to consider first, second, third, fourth, and why. And in the back of Odin, we have probably, 1,000 practice transitions, from beginning to end, from due diligence forward, that, that's referenceable to kind of get a feel. We also, he plugs into the social channels in a very interesting way. And so we're able to really get the chatter the experience after the fact. And so whether you're a specialist looking at maybe a trifecta deal with with an ortho, a pedo, and an oral surgeon, that you're going to combine your EBITDA based on your volume, or whether you're a single doc just trying to figure out if you're going to get a decent multiple because you're not quite at maybe a 2.5 million plus a year level or whatever it is, Odin's invaluable. I would not make a practice transition, open up a practice, or move to a DSO without Odin by my side ever. You couldn't torture me.
Yeah. So yeah, and anybody who's gone through a sell before, it's just like it's brutal. It's a ton of work, and it's no matter what. So if you can have something that helps you cut through the noise, that's huge. You know what that reminds me of? It's kind of like this. So if you just go to AI, like random AI, and you just go to and type in, I want to go on a vacation to this place, plan my vacation. It'll just plan it, right? And you're going to get some decent stuff. It's not going to be horrible. It's just going to be standard. My AI that I use for everything, that knows everything about me, it's integrated with everything that I do. It knows what I like on my vacation and what I don't like on my vacation. And I can go in and say, hey, plan this vacation for me. It knows that I don't mind seeing nature, but I don't want to spend a week in nature. I need to be near a hub of good food. If I'm not close to good food, if I'm not in walking distance of good food, I don't want to go there. I want access to quick coffee that's good. Not Starbucks, but like good coffee. And so it already knows, yes, sir. It already knows, like, when I put in a place, it goes, oh yeah, you're going to love this place. Or you know what, this isn't a great place for you. Maybe there's some options here or there, but it's not your normal thing. And weather. And then it factors in weather for me. But it took me a long time to get it there. So basically what you've done is you've created something that they can use to quickly get up to speed, that already has what they like on the hike, and et cetera, et cetera. And again, like you said, you still need your people, right? This doesn't eliminate the people. It just eliminates I think if I was your marketing person, it eliminates your burden of interacting with those people. Right. So you're going to work with these people, and you're going to now be able to answer their questions faster and provide them more accurate information on what you want, because it's doing the legwork for you. Let's talk about team hiring and like training and systems and those kind of things. How will it help a dentist that way?
So this is another, I think, is a really good question. Also, back to your foodie experience. So the question would be, why can't I take my data and just upload it to a consumer grade AI? The problem with that is that even though they're getting better and the context models are getting better, the challenge with that is that it can't, a single model approach can't, even if it's comes out of the box stock where it uses sub agents to kind of like help it think, even in that scenario, it's not smart enough to really know you in a high stakes environment. It may feel good. It may be better than you thought it would be. But if I took your data that you spent all this time and we uploaded it to an Odin modelization, a customized version for you, and then brought all of your company docs into it, and then you asked what kind of food you want, I mean, it's like, it's another level. For travel, you may not need that level. For clinical, dentistry.
Exactly. Like I said, I want restaurants, I want coffee, I want to know what the weather is. Is it in walking distance? Find me a nice hotel or Airbnb, or is it an Airbnb type place? Because some of them aren't as you travel. But that's simple, right? And it's not high stakes. If I go there and it's like, I don't like, I can stay in my hotel, you know what I mean, and just chill and watch ESPN. That's just as good half the time. So it's not high stakes for me, right? Where my business, on the other hand, is high stakes.
Yeah, and well said. For the team, it's incredibly valuable, because when a doc signs up for the vault, one of the things they'll say is, "Well, how do I use this?" Because they'll go through it with me, and there's all these different assets, and they'll be like, "Well, how do we use this? Like, where do we go?" And I'm like, "Look, it's about connecting the dots and just knowing you can go there. There's nothing about it that's hard to use." It's just knowing, like, the phones on your app are on your phone. That's all you really need to know. And that'll increase on our user per hour, like, say, how many hours per week do you use Odin per week, has went up, 4 or 5 fold in just the last 6 months, because the users are getting smarter. So for the team, For our aviation project that we had to figure out a way to keep it from hallucinating, which took us 11 months, and that's a whole nother story. But one of the things we did because this is a major aviation company, is once we built their Odin model and it was working for all of their crazy systems, we made signs that said, it was called the captain. That's what we call it today. And signs would say, "Have you asked the captain?" And they put it on all the windows, all the doors, through all the campuses. We're connected to 4 college campuses, a couple military contracts. And it's saving, collectively, it's saving, them millions a year. Because the whole point is this: if any team member that has a question, if you just go to Odin first, it's going to give you most of the time a really good answer, unless it's hyper specific to the practice that it just wouldn't know unless we have the knowledge base in there. And we built their custom Apex version, which is a whole nother story. So yeah, it's I did an interview with a doc last week, and I said, "What are questions that you hear all the time?" And I go through your last week with me. So we looked at all of his emails, because he has his team email him, questions that aren't like immediate. And then we looked at the questions that had been asked all week. And about 80% of them, Odin could have answered like this, in many ways better than anybody else could have. So that's where the time savings comes in, is you just have to know to go to the water, and take a drink. And then, life just gets, a lot easier. But doctors get asked a lot of questions that are gray area questions, Gary. So it's like, same question, but in this case, do I need to do that? Well, then we have we're separating the parent from the child in dentistry. So in this case, do they need to, do we need to do this? Do they need to fill out this form right now?
Well, the other thing that I think a lot of doctors discount is you are making CEO decisions and CFO and COO and all these decisions all day, every day, but you're making them at the end of the day when you are completely burnt out. So your brain goes into not what is strategically the best way to solve this. Your brain goes into what's the quickest way to solve this, which isn't always the best way to solve it, just to get it off your plate. And I've been there too as a business owner. I'm sure you have too, where it's just like, I'm too busy. I'm too tired. I don't have 6 hours to think through each of these problems. I'm just going to say yes or no to this. But then 6 months later, that comes back to bite you. And so that's where I'm seeing like fatigue, physical and mental fatigue, where this allows you to quickly exercise against something without like, if you call a consultant, the consultant's going to ask you 100 more questions. If you call me about marketing, you're not going to get an easy answer. You're going to get, well, what about this? And what about this? And what I'm going to put your brain on turbo drive. You know what I mean? And you're going to have to go dig things up. So you have something that can fit in between those two worlds, I think.
That's interesting. And we're actually building a specialized model for the guys that simplify dentistry. And one of the things that we were talking about when we were envisioning their Odin style product was they want to simplify dentistry. So they want to take complicated questions and turn it into simple, almost like Brian P. Moran, the New York Times bestselling author of the 12-week year, when we created the system around that. And what it does is when you ask it a complicated question, it makes it more complicated. So it starts by expanding the question, and then once it's blown way out, the model's going to be, it's called Axis. It's going to be like, okay, do we have a full picture? And then the doc's going to be like, okay, yep, that's it. That's horrifying. But yep, there we go. And then it pulls it into these 5 pillars and actually simplifies it. But you're right. I mean, you always start, if you want to do it right, by expanding, right? Making it almost feel more complicated. And then, Gary has to then take all of that and give you an answer.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so what does something like this cost, or what's the entry level way to get into something like this? Or do you set up a demo, or what's the how does it work? If someone's listening to this and it says, man, this makes sense, I feel like this might help my life, what's the next steps for them to reach out to you?
Well, they can go to vault.dental. There's a few things you can do. One, you could set a meeting and we can walk you through it, which is fine. I think every practice in the world should have access to this. It's like not having access to good clinical data or not having access to good business data. So I feel pretty strongly about that. But we can walk through it. They can sign up on the site instantly. It's about $5,000 for the year, but that covers all locations, the team members, everybody. So it's when you break it down to that, it's fairly affordable, really affordable. We raise the price, but we raise the price. Everybody's grandfathered into the price that they start. And and we only raise the price when users use it more, our token expense goes up. And so what we do is we bump the price, but you're still grandfathered in. So it's a really great deal. We've been doing that for 15 years and it works really well because the early adopters end up being, your friends and your advisors, and they come up with great ideas. They're like, hey, have you thought about building this? We built a crazy thing it'll sit chairside and give you, treatment, basically case presentation advice. We all kinds of fun things in the Odin labs that we're working on right now. All that stuff came from doctors. And so being grandfathered in, I think, is worth it because it comes back to us. But they can sign up, they can jump into a meeting. There's a button there to do that. And then they walk through, and then we do an onboarding and we create their account. And when we do a meeting, we're usually walking them through it in a way that applies to their practice. So we'll ask, what are some things, if you could just move out of the way, would be really helpful for you? What are some goals you have over the next 2 years? What does the next roadmap for the next 12 months look like? And then when we demo, we'll go and ask questions and we'll do stuff. We'll run a practice shield report on almost every practice immediately so they can see that right away. We'll share with them, like the AI. One of the things, Gary, that I would leave your listeners and viewers with, there's some things with AI that are, make HIPAA look like a party favor in terms of liability. Not having an AI use policy in place for your employees while they're out there using consumer grade AI in the practice, you have no idea why, is a massive liability. I believe not having a website disclaimer that says, hey, we may use AI. So we've built a lot of this stuff in the membership, and it's just free, no additional charge for the members. So we'll go through the meeting, apply it to their practice, run a few things so they can see it, so that they can envision themselves in it. We have an associate last week, been out of dental school for 3 years, working 12-hour shifts, 4 days a week, 8 to 8, and signed up for the vault, not a practice owner. We've had residents sign up for it, actually, and not a practice owner because he's building a practice. He's getting ready to make the transition. He's looking at inventory locations. And so we walked through his entire scenario, and it was just a no-brainer that, he needed to have this. It's applicable to anybody really in dentistry. Your office managers will love it. If your hygienist needs to know how to explain some complicated clinical procedure to a 17-year-old with a pizza metaphor that actually is still, robust, compliant, and doesn't suck. I mean, it can do all of that. And then they sign up, then we do an onboarding, and then during the onboarding, we're doing work for them because now we know what do they need, what's their roadmap look like, what are their challenges look like. We actually go solve some problems in the onboarding. And then we're extremely available, for mastermind type events with their team, whatever they need, because those meetings are where we get our great ideas from. So we're almost overly accessible. And then I think it's a huge value because, myself, I have, 12,000 plus hours, as a pilot, I kind of log everything I do. And, if you look at how much time that is and how many hours, there are in a day and how old AI really is since about 2020, there's not a lot of people out there that have those number of hours. And it doesn't make me any smarter, but it sure gives you some perspective as you see things change. Now you got, open cloud. You've got, people are starting to become, really good with agentic thinking. So yeah, if they're in the vault, they're going to be, get a front row seat to all of that as it unfolds and have a good resource.
That's awesome, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on. I know this is a broad topic. You did a good job narrowing it down today. Hopefully that helps the users at least dip their toe into this, and then you'll realize that there's a whole nother world out there. So make sure you check that out. And Eddie, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks, Gary.